Yes, I'm afraid it's true, and I'm really sorry. After 13 years of making Wheeler Dealers, I'm now going to be leaving the show.
It's 2017, and the news hits like a blown head gasket in the world of motoring television. Ed China, the towering, soft-spoken, brilliantly skilled mechanic who has been the beating heart of Wheeler Dealers since its very first episode, has announced he's leaving the show. This was a man whose hands had breathed new life into dozens of tired, rusty classics, whose calm explanations made even the most complex automotive repairs seem almost achievable. On forums, in YouTube comments, and in Facebook groups, the same questions echoed. Was he burned out from years of hard filming schedules, or was there something darker at play behind the polished metal and warm banter? Before we can answer what really happened, we need to rewind the clock. Back to a time when the name Wheeler Dealers was nothing more than a pitch on a piece of paper, and Ed China was just another car enthusiast with a knack for thinking big. Yes, he could fix cars, but he was also an inventor, a dreamer, and someone who looked at engineering as both a science and an art. Born on May 9, 1971, in London, Ed had a fascination with making things work from an early age. He studied engineering product design at London's South Bank University, and while there he created the casual loafa, a motorized sofa capable of driving on roads. It was a perfect snapshot of who Ed was: imaginative, meticulous, and not afraid to get his hands dirty while making something no one had ever seen before. This inventive streak landed him appearances on UK TV shows long before Wheeler Dealers, including Top Gear and This Morning, where his creations often left audiences in disbelief. By the late 1990s, he was making a name for himself, not as a celebrity mechanic yet, but as the kind of guy television producers would remember. The early 2000s brought a new wave of car programming. Instead of high-speed racing and exotic supercars, there was an audience hungry for practical restoration, shows where old, worn-out vehicles were given a second chance. It was here that producer Michael Wood pitched an idea: a two-man team that would buy used cars, restore them, and sell them for a profit. Enter Mike Brewer, a motor trader with a sharp tongue and a sharper eye for deals, and Ed China, the engineer with hands of gold. The dynamic was simple. Mike would find and buy the cars, while Ed would take them into the workshop and transform them. The result was Wheeler Dealers, which debuted on the Discovery Channel in 2003. Mike's wheeling and dealing contrasted perfectly with Ed's calm, patient, and incredibly detailed restoration work. Audiences loved the show not just for the cars, but for the authenticity. When Ed replaced a clutch or rebuilt an engine, you saw every step. Nothing was faked, and nothing was glossed over. The cars weren't million-dollar exotics. They were relatable classics: Minis, VW Golfs, Ford Escorts, vehicles viewers could imagine owning themselves. Ed's workshop segments became the heart of the program. Unlike some automotive shows where repairs are skipped or over-dramatized, Ed walked viewers through every single process: why a particular part failed, how to fix it, and what tools were needed. For many car enthusiasts, these segments weren't just entertainment. They were free masterclasses from a man who clearly loved what he did. Where others might slap on flashy mods, he preferred sympathetic restorations, keeping as much of the car's authenticity as possible. This attention to detail quickly made him a household name among gearheads. Make no mistake, without Ed China, Wheeler Dealers wouldn't have been Wheeler Dealers. Mike Brewer might have been the face of the deal, but Ed was the soul of the restoration. His towering 6'7" frame bent over an engine bay became an iconic image. His gentle, measured voice explaining complex mechanical jobs turned intimidating projects into something even beginners felt they could tackle. In many ways, Ed was the reason viewers trusted the show. They knew he wouldn't cut corners for the sake of TV. If a repair needed to take hours, the camera would show it. If a part was too expensive, he'd say so, and find a better, smarter solution. By the mid-2010s, Wheeler Dealers was being broadcast in more than 200 territories. It had grown from a UK hit to a global phenomenon, and Ed China was its mechanical ambassador. But as the show's popularity skyrocketed, so did the pressures behind the scenes. The demands of production were changing. The networks wanted faster turnarounds, more entertainment segments, and less of the slow, methodical detail that made Ed famous. And that was where the first cracks began to appear. To most viewers, Wheeler Dealers looked like a car lover's dream job. You find an old classic, buy it at a bargain, spend a few days wrenching in the garage, and then, just like that, you've got a beautiful, fully restored vehicle ready to sell. Episodes took weeks to film. Restorations weren't just about fixing cars. They had to be shot from multiple angles, with pickup shots to make sure every step looked smooth and clear for the audience. Brake replacement that might take a few hours in real life could stretch into 2 full filming days, and that was before factoring in the constant demands from producers to keep the pace moving for television. For Ed, who valued accuracy and thoroughness over showbiz shortcuts, these demands were already beginning to rub the wrong way. The early seasons of Wheeler Dealers had a relatively small, close-knit production team. Everyone knew everyone, and the spirit of the show was very much car guys making car TV. But as the series grew in popularity, the business side of television began to creep in. Discovery Channel, which had been airing the show internationally, became more involved. Eventually, production shifted to Velocity in the US for later seasons. With that change came new executives, new budgets, and a very different approach to making the program. In the UK-based seasons, Ed had been free to run repairs his way, long, detailed, and precise. But now there were murmurs of cutting down the workshop segments in favor of more entertainment beats, quicker montages, fewer explanations, more focus on personality-driven banter. In short, the very thing fans loved most, watching Ed carefully strip down and rebuild cars, was being eyed as too slow for modern TV. Here's the thing about Ed China. He isn't just a TV presenter, he's an engineer to the core. For him, there's no point in showing a job if it's not shown correctly. If a gearbox rebuild requires 12 detailed steps, all 12 should be shown, because that's how viewers actually learn. But for television executives, those 12 steps could feel like a drag. They wanted more high-energy sequences, less grease under the fingernails authenticity. The narrative had to be sharper, faster, even if that meant skipping key mechanical details or staging certain shots. To him, skipping over the boring bits was not just lazy, it was misleading. And misleading the audience was something he simply couldn't do. The more Ed pushed for keeping things real, the more friction built up between him and the production team. As the show's scope grew, so did the financial pressures, while Wheeler Dealers still prided itself on restoring cars to a high standard. The bean counters began watching every penny. Cheaper parts, quicker fixes, outsourced work, these cost-cutting measures made sense on paper, but they clashed directly with Ed's standards. There were also rumors, unconfirmed, but persistent, that some repairs were being done off-camera by third-party garages to save time. This wasn't unique to Wheeler Dealers. Many car shows use similar methods. But for Ed, it undermined the transparency he'd built his reputation on. In his mind, the audience deserved to see everything, even if it meant the show took longer to produce or cost more to make. For the network, this mindset was inefficient. Workshop segments seemed shorter. Certain repairs were suddenly explained in a single line of dialogue rather than demonstrated step by step. The pace was quicker, but the soul felt different. In interviews, Ed remained professional, but there were hints in his tone, little pauses, careful wording that suggested frustration. At public appearances, when fans asked about the show's changes, he'd smile politely but sometimes dodge the question. Then came the season filmed entirely. In the United States, a major shift that excited some fans but worried others. The production was bigger, slicker, and somehow colder. It wasn't just about cars anymore, it was about branding, marketability, and keeping the network happy. It was early 2017 when the news broke. In a short but direct video posted on his own YouTube channel, Ed China told the world he was leaving Wheeler Dealers. He sat there in his trademark calm manner, no drama, no theatrics, but the words hit like a sledgehammer for fans. After nearly 14 years, over 200 cars, and millions of devoted viewers, the man who had become the mechanical soul of the series was walking away. Then, with that matter-of-fact tone his audience knew so well, he explained the reason: changes in production that he believed would compromise the quality of the work. For viewers, this wasn't just another TV personality leaving a show, it was the departure of someone they trusted, someone they believed had kept Wheeler Dealers grounded in reality. In his statement, Ed was clear but professional. He explained that the show's new production company, Velocity, wanted to reduce the workshop segments, the very parts of the show where Ed worked his magic, in order to speed up filming and cut costs. The workshop wasn't just a backdrop, it was where the heart of Wheeler Dealers beat. Without those detailed repairs, he believed the show would lose its educational value and authenticity. He made it plain, rather than compromise on quality, he would rather leave, and that was exactly what he did. Mike Brewer, Ed's longtime co-host, quickly responded. On his own social media, Brewer said he was gutted that Ed was leaving, but insisted that the decision had nothing to do with personal conflict between them. However, Brewer also defended the new production approach, saying that changes were necessary to keep the show sustainable and competitive. To some fans, this sounded like a reasonable business move. To others, it felt like an admission that the original magic was being sacrificed for speed and profit. Unfortunately for Brewer, perception quickly turned against him. The internet has a way of turning disagreements into battles, and that's exactly what happened here. Within days, Wheeler Dealers forums and Facebook groups were ablaze with debate. Many fans accused Brewer of selling out or forcing Ed off the show. Some supporters of Ed even began harassing Brewer online, sending him threats and flooding his pages with angry comments. Brewer's wife received abusive messages as well, prompting the family to speak out about the harassment. Ed himself stepped in to tell fans to calm down, reminding them that no one should be threatened over a television show. But by then, the damage to the Wheeler Dealers' public image had been done. When the next season aired with Ant Anstead replacing Ed in the workshop, the reaction was mixed. Ant was a talented mechanic and an engaging personality in his own right. But for many, longtime viewers, it just wasn't the same. Ratings held steady for a while, boosted by curiosity. But the emotional connection that had defined the show for so many years was weakened. Ed's absence was noticeable, not just in the workshop, but in the show's overall tone. For some fans, Wheeler Dealers had ended the day Ed left, even if the episodes kept coming. When Ed walked away from Wheeler Dealers, he didn't walk away from cars. Almost immediately, he turned his attention to building something new on his own terms. He launched his own YouTube channel, Ed China's Garage Revival, where he could restore cars without interference from producers or network executives. Television had given him instant global reach. YouTube meant growing an audience step by step. Still, his loyal fan base followed him, and his videos racked up hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions, of views. In the years after leaving Wheeler Dealers, Ed experimented with different formats. He released episodes of Garage Revival, wrote a book titled Grease Junkie, a book of moving parts, and even worked on quirky engineering projects that echoed his early days as an inventor. The freedom was clear in his work. No scripted banter, no imposed deadlines, and no corporate checklist to tick off. Ed could return to what he loved most: solving mechanical puzzles and sharing that process with the world. Working independently meant smaller budgets, less production support, and no guaranteed paycheck. It was a risk. But for someone who valued integrity over comfort, it was the only path forward. Away from the TV spotlight, Ed also revisited his inventive streak. He continued building bizarre, record-breaking vehicles, including updates to his famous motorized sofa, and appeared at car shows and engineering events worldwide. His autobiography, Grease Junkie, offered a more personal glimpse into his career and life philosophy. It wasn't just a tell-all about wheeler dealers. It was an insight into why he made the choices he did, and why staying true to your craft matters in a world obsessed with quick results. If the networks thought Ed's departure would make him fade from public view, they were wrong. His followers remained fiercely loyal, often promoting his new projects across social media and defending him in discussions about the show's history. For many viewers, Ed represented something rare in television: authenticity. They didn't just like him because he was good on camera. They liked him because they believed he was exactly the same off camera. When Ant Anstead stepped in to replace Ed on Wheeler Dealers, he faced an uphill battle. Ant was charismatic, knowledgeable, and experienced. But he wasn't Ed. Some fans gave him a fair shot. Others refused to watch at all. To his credit, Ant brought his own style to the workshop, blending practical work with a bit more on-camera showmanship. For new viewers, he was a breath of fresh air. For longtime fans, he was a reminder of what had been lost. A new style, for a classic show under Velocity's influence, the show's tone shifted further. The workshop segments were shorter, the deals more tightly edited, and the pacing designed for quick, modern viewing. It was still Wheeler Dealers, but it wasn't quite the same show that had won over car lovers in the early 2000s. This evolution kept the series alive, but it also cemented the divide in the fan base: old-school viewers who missed Ed's depth and newer audiences who preferred the streamlined approach. Every new Wheeler Dealers post was met with two kinds of comments: praise for the current team and nostalgia for Ed China's era. It became clear that the show's history would always be split into two chapters: before Ed left and after Ed left. In pure numbers, yes, the show kept going, drawing decent ratings and expanding its international reach. But in terms of cultural impact, many argue its peak was during the Ed China years. His commitment to doing things properly had set a standard that was hard to match. Looking back, Ed's decision to walk away wasn't about ego or money. It was about creative integrity. He refused to compromise the workshop's educational value for the sake of faster production or lower costs. In an era where many people would have stayed for the paycheck, he chose principle instead. It's a reality of television. When a show grows big enough, it stops being just about the people making it and starts being about the brand. Networks step in. Decisions get made based on market research instead of passion, and what once felt personal starts to feel manufactured. Ed's story is just one example of how this process can push even the most dedicated talent away. Even today, years after leaving Wheeler Dealers, Ed's workshop methods are still used by amateur restorers worldwide. Clips from his old episodes circulate online, inspiring new generations of car lovers. In many ways, his departure didn't end his influence. It amplified it. Ask Ed, and he'll likely tell you yes. He kept his integrity, his fan base, and his ability to work on his own terms. And while Wheeler Dealers continues, it's no longer the only place fans can see Ed China at work. For those who value authenticity over convenience, Ed's exit from the show isn't a sad ending. It's the story of someone who stayed true to himself, no matter the cost. So, now you know what really happened to Ed China and Wheeler Dealers, but the question is, did Ed make the right choice? Or did the show lose its heart when he left? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button, subscribe for more untold stories from the world of cars, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And hey, if you want to see our exclusive episode where we track down Ed's current garage projects, the link is right here on screen. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep your hands dirty and your builds clean.